welcome all tonight to another edition of the Bayou City Soccer podcast on the Orange and Blueprints. I'm your host, Manny Olivares. It's been a slow week on the field wise because it was the international break, but we still have a lot of news to break down with. And to get that started with that, we got my co-host Diego. Diego, how you feeling, man?
I'm good. I'm excited to be back. Excited to be back here. I was just reposting the Twitter announcement that we are live. So you guys should totally hop on, talk to us, give us any comments, give us any questions or anything like that. But I'm excited. It was a slow week, but there's plenty to talk about, from the international window to some outbound transfers and a very daunting task as we head to a arguably hotter and stickier city in the United States.
Yeah, exactly. I know, like you mentioned, we got a couple of international games to talk about, especially the U.S. versus Jamaica. I think that was the game that everyone was looking at, especially if you were into Dash. That was the one that you were looking on into and everything. Of course, as you mentioned, Orlando Pride, not an easy team to go through. Maybe a little bit easy after the international break, but it is what it is. But before we get started on that, we have the big elephant in the room to talk about. As noted on last week's podcast, Diego said, who was a player to watch for the podcast? Player to watch during the international break? I forgot.
I said Diana Ordóñez was going to be the player to watch.
It was.
It technically was. I mean, it technically.
But not for the Dash reasons. But yeah, so it was announced earlier last week, late last week, that Diana Ordóñez was transferred off on an undisclosed fee to Tigres Femenil. And right now, as we know, today she has landed back to Mexico to be with the club for the first time today with Tigres. After, you could say, I think after the second game, she scored the Rudy said golazo that she did, basically a own goal tap in, but to give Mexico the win. So I think, I don't know how to start. It's like, how do you feel about the transfer? I think it was coming. I think it was coming before this unexcused happens 3 weeks in a row. And of course, I think 2 months ago she was back, healthy in the squad, but didn't play minutes or anything. And then the unexcused, I think once the unexcused absence hit, is like excused absence hit, I think it was like the writing was on the wall. But first of all, what do you think of the move?
I mean, I think this was necessarily a transfer of a very skilled player that just couldn't fit with this Houston team. I mean, she went through 4 coaches in 3 years or something like that, and I think in any situation, a striker is not going to excel in that situation. But admittedly, it was like a case of just a player that couldn't really make it in Houston, and like the cards weren't in her favor, I guess, for her to have that successful run with the Dash. And I think it's best for both parties to really look for something else. I think she's going to do pretty well in Tigres. I think she definitely has the skill to be a really dominant striker in Liga MX. We've seen another player of her play style, Christina Birkenrode, play for the other Monterrey team and have a lot of success there, being a tall, physical striker. So, I mean, there's a lot of positives for her to join that team. And I think it also has the positives for the Dash to really commit to who they want their number 9 to be. For example, Messiah Bright has just been given a contract extension, much to Rudy's excitement, as she notched 2 goals in 31 games. Hopefully plenty more. But I think this is the first step in Fabrice's era, at least, where the club's really taking a direction of who they're really going to prioritize. And I said this last show of when do we need to see lineup consistencies? This is the first domino to fall of, okay, now we know who the number 9 on this team is going to be. And I think a lot of a lot of the bets are going to be on Messiah Bright to really notch in those goals.
Yeah, exactly. I think pretty much sums up what you said. I think it's just very, very like underwhelming. I think
Mhm.
I think her I think coming literally the dash got her on her second year after the freshman year. Her freshman, goal scoring record. You
Mhm.
know, and after that it's just been downhill. I did of course sadly not to her own merit because players was coming into in the squad, a lot of changes in the coaches' decisions, play styles, a lot of things we were adapting. Of course, injuries did not help her a lot in
Mhm.
this transition. And I think if you're looking for expected goals during her time with the dash is pretty low. I think it was a point 26. I was diving with Edson because he was like, "Oh, it's a great upgrade for Tigres," and I was like, you want to check out their stats? Attacking wise, it's like on the attacking wise, it was pretty. Everything was in the red except defending, which she was really good. In most of her systems, being a presence, but never good at presence in attack. Never had a chance to make an impact in the game. And I think
Mhm.
it summed her up. I think I will respect her the way she left because I think that post that she says, on Instagram that she mentioned, thanks for the time being here, but she knew like I didn't lived up to my potential here, and that's something that she will regret coming out future, in future years as her career goes on. I think when you have the hot and initial streak in your first year, I think you're always bound to build on top of that. Is like I think what comes to mind is like Ansu Fati,
Mhm.
player that was red hot. It was supposed to be literally what Yami Yamal right now is, but after injury and unfor setbacks, is basically unknown. And I think Indiana, we don't want that for Diana Ordóñez. Hopefully a good landing spot at Tigres, but hopefully doesn't pull back on her career. So, but you mentioned it before, Messiah Bright. Basically now is her I think it's her position to lose. She's the
Yeah.
only quote unquote striker in the team. Of course, you have Yasmin Ryan. Uh, even though in preseason I had Amanda West to be the sneaky choice, but she's out for the season with the injury. So basically, it's just Messiah Bright and Yasmin Ryan as your
Yeah.
forward until the transfer window opens up. I know with this big gaping hole, do you expect a big signing coming in the summer in the striker position? I think now more apparently that there's a big hole in the forward line.
I don't know. I think we could go one of two directions, and I mean it's kind of the only two directions that we can take is either make an established signing that's proven to score goals in this league or in another elite league, or we can develop through the college system. We can always pick up a player that is either just recently graduated and shows a lot of promise. I mean, there's a lot of talent in the NCAA, and I think I'm always going to stick to that. I think. The dream situation for the Dash is definitely to get an elite level striker, a maybe not a Sam Kerr level player. I think that's a little out of the budget. I don't know the Dash budget, but I'm assuming that it's not Sam Kerr. But definitely a player that can provide that kind of impact. Yaz Ryan level of talent, a player that can be effective, but really most importantly be clinical. I think getting that established player instead of an NCAA rookie, I feel like it'll benefit you to finally get some stability on the scoring because I feel like defensively we've been kind of all over the place when it comes to the back line, the positioning, I mean the goals conceded is certainly something to note, but outside of that, there's been a lot of movement within that back line. And I think it would be really important for the Dash to really cement a player that can give you goals on a consistent basis because when your defense sometimes fails you, you need that offense to be gunning. That way you can at least outscore your opponents. I think what we've seen throughout these past couple of games for the Dash that they've opened the season, it's been a defensive miscommunication or an error or they fall behind in some way, but they don't have the offensive firepower to necessarily come back. And I think that an established player will at least help with that regard.
Yeah, I think so. I think I think you hit a good point on the NCAA. There's good talent. For instance, that's how we got Maggie Graham. Coming out from her college years and she transitioned well to the NWSL, especially in this
Hmm.
Houston side. I think you always want to go with the youth, but you also want something. I think in the striker position, I think the Dash has never got someone experienced at Leafo. Of course, you had Rachel Daly for a couple of years, serving there, and has
Hmm.
been a great help. Ebony Salmon had that one good year with the Dash and propelled her to the WSL. And ever since that, I think it was just very hit and miss after that. Messiah Bright does help in the system, does help with positions and everything. I think it's
Hmm.
just we'll see who how the Dashes will choose, and I think it will be really telling about the president of soccer, Angela, and also Fabrice how they handle this. I think I will give credit to the Dash on this move because it was just only 6 months before her contract was going to
Yeah.
be up. And I would say typical Dash, they will let the contract expire and let her go on the free. And
Yeah.
at least they get something in return. I think it just shows, I think, a little bit of maturity from Angela as a president of soccer or GM, or quote unquote, you say, to get business done. And
Hmm.
hopefully we might see something in the summer, something that might surprise us. I think the way she does business is very, very different and very refreshing if you're a
Hmm.
Houston Dash fan, knowing that you have someone behind the wheel that is going to make moves, And I think that's something you need for the Dash if they want to
Yeah.
compete. If they want to
100%.
compete, yeah,
100%. And Dash fans, I mean, I cannot stress this enough. Even if we don't sign that established striker that you guys want to see, that y'all want to see, like in this transfer window, there is so much talent in NCAA, and we have seen this time and time again with players like Maggie Graham that's already on the Dash, excelling as a player, and she's only going to get better. Um, Izzy Engel from Notre Dame, Kiara Prale from Lipscomb. Like, there are strikers that are there that are notching an insane amount of goals. Abby Borchers is another player that can really provide an impact. I think there is so much talent in the NCAA that I think it would be a disservice for the Dash to not even consider it. So I think we're putting ourselves in a great position. And I love how you mentioned that we made this deal early to get some money out of it, because now we have the financial flexibility to do so. Maybe a year ago, we wouldn't have the flexibility to go sign up a midfielder, and we had to, quote unquote, settle for a Maggie Graham. Luckily, that worked out in our favor. But now we have that flexibility to be like, okay, we got money from the Diana trade or from the Diana transfer. Let's see if we can do something with it.
yeah,
I think I love when you threw in the word maturity, but I also love how Angela and Fabrice are communicating about what this team needs to succeed. I mean, Diana was, I would say, very well liked in Houston, and I think losing her 6 months out of her contract would be a relatively big loss for the culture of this team. But I think it's a bullet that you have to take, and I think I'm really glad that they did it. I think it shows that they're finally willing to take the steps necessary in order to build a successful and winning formula, which is, I mean, what we all want to begin with. Because, I mean, let's not get sidetracked. I understand that we're like 3 points behind the playoff picture, but last season we were at the rock bottom of the league. This has been an incredibly quick rebuild, and we're, even if we get into a position where we're even close to the bottom again, we're a completely different team with a new identity. And so I think it's going to be really important for us to pounce on these on these opportunities to get strikers, to get midfielders, to really reinforce the way that we want to play. And by the looks of it, it's going to be very possession based. It's going to be not really focusing on transitional play. It's going to be build slowly from the back, and I like that play style. But I think right now we need to get the players that are better suited for it. I think Diana was a a very good transitional player that can really catch you on the break. I think despite her size, she was very quick, and I think really a lot of her goals came from transition play, and that just wasn't going to suit Fabrice's style. And so I'm really happy that these kinds of moves are finally being taken, because it's just clearing the driftwood, clearing the players that wouldn't really benefit your system, and now you can really start fresh.
Yeah, exactly. I think you need a new refresh, a new mindset. I think with a new head coach, a new president of soccer, I think it's just a lot of things to change. Change is good. Change is not always you know easy. I think that's the word I'm looking for. Not easy. But I think if it's the benefit for the team, it's a benefit for the club long term. I think you need to, like you said, bite the bullet and see what out there. Sometimes the
Hmm.
grass is greener, sometimes it's not, but you never know until you make that change and make that
Hmm.
and see hopefully the dash can do something with that as well.
Hmm.
uh so that was pretty much it on that. So we'll look into it as the summer hits, you know by I think a couple of weeks from now. I think I can't remember. The NWSL summer transfer window is going to be open. I believe it's a couple of weeks right now, but I'll look at it again. But so we'll see who the dash will get, and
Hmm.
we'll see what other changes might come up. But other news for that was we today we see some promotional staff announcements, promotions. It's really good. I think it's really hard to comment it because we don't know the players, the people here, but you know, technical operations, performance staffs, and internal promotions. I think is really good. Other than you say, I think coming from Angela, I think to see growth in the club. I think this is even though sports science, conditioning coaches, performance analysts, and our directed operations, and I think it's really good for the club. But I think seeing this little uh I think
Hmm.
upgrades in the team, it might be small, it might be unnoticeable, but I think something's real needed. I think it just happened, 2 years ago with the Houston Dynamo. They got a lot of huge influx of like support in the staff. I think Angela is trying to make this team more professional and more serious, and that's pretty good. That's really good. I don't know. That's pretty much what I have to comment about that. That's pretty. I think that's what we need to look at. The team is the dash is stepping up. So hopefully that translates on the field. Hopefully that translates on transfers. Hopefully that translates on fitness.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that moving forward. Now going back to the international window, I watched mostly just the U.S. games on my end, but I don't know which ones you saw, Diego. I really saw just Avery Patterson started and completed the full 90 minutes. Her first game on against China, and then of course she had a sub appearance against Jamaica. Kiki had only played for the U.S. game. I think the previous was a training camp, and
Hmm.
started for Jamaica, and also Michelle Losey started for Nigeria. Sarah Putigam as well started for Austria, and that
Hmm.
was pretty much it. Your thoughts on the international window, or have you seen those games?
I saw the Mexico game, which I mean, I guess at this point isn't really. There's not really much to comment about. The
There's
only
always
thing to
more
comment
time.
about that is I'm a man of my word, because I told you guys I was gonna watch it, and I did. But I saw the U.S. game against China. But I thought Avery was doing great. I think her control of the ball was really good. I thought her spacing was really good. I think Emma Hayes has a lot of trust on her, and I think there's plenty of reason for that. I think she's a great player, and I think she really displayed that against China. The Jamaica game, I saw the first half because Kiki getting to play and getting to face off against the U.S. I thought Kiki didn't do so poorly considering the score. I think the score, yeah, the U.S. definitely pulled off a pretty big win, but I think Kiki did have a lot of good moments, and I think it's good for her to get reps, get minutes. Um, I think more importantly, I'm just impressed with the amount of players that we had starting. I think seeing Sarah, seeing Kiki, seeing Avery get starts during this window means a lot for this team because it shows that there are players that we have, that even some players that we really haven't even used to their full advantage, that have the capability to start for their country. And I think that'll be really important going forward because I think these kinds of reps are really going to help players, stay consistent, stay warm, stay motivated because I mean this season's going to be tough. This is going to be a tough season whether we make the playoffs or not. And so I think these kinds of international breaks are really good because it does focus players to like for a bigger motivation to play for your country. Avery's gone on record billions of times of how much it means to her, and so I wouldn't see why she can't bring that motivation back to the dash and play even better. That way, she gets called up more, and it's a cyclical formula of success. I guess I just think it's great. I'm glad that Kiki played really well. I was a little nervous because obviously the U.S. is a far better team than Jamaica, but it was good to see her play well. And yeah, I mean, I didn't catch all the European games because those are always tricky to watch. Um, but I did watch the U.S. games and I watched the Mexico one. I mean, but the Mexico one, I mean, a certain player that doesn't play for us anymore played pretty well.
I think it's really. I think I was really uh first I only watched the U.S. games and a little bit of highlights on some other games, but that's pretty much it. I think for every uh it was good, but also underwhelming her game with China. Not because she played bad. I think she played great, but I feel like she had nothing to do because China literally had almost like less than 10% of the ball possession, and US was like very dominant on that game. And I feel like she didn't really have much time on the ball, but she really was really good on just covering her space and everything. And but I think when it came to Jamaica, I feel like Jamaica posted a little bit more threat. Kiki had a good looks within the first minutes of the first half until US got comfortable in the game and started to grow. And then of course Avery did have an assist in the Jamaica game with giving the
Mhm.
second goal to Lynn Biondolo. Really great assist if you really look at the replay, wicked cross in
It
the
was a
box.
beautiful cross. It was a stunner.
Yeah, and it just helped Lynn to be open in the box and just tapped it in basically, But I think that was really good. I think one thing that really caught my eye, I think especially the U.S. game, but not I think Emma Hayes. I think she's trying to adapt what all international coaches. One is like your club uh form matters. I think U.S. is like in the old U.S. system. I think you always had your set 25 or your set 30 players. Like this is the players going to call up despite their their form or anything, these players are going to call up, be called up. And Hema Hayes is like, no, if you're doing good on your club, you're gonna get called up. Like Labonta got called up. The fullback from Orlando Pride, Abello. Yeah, she got her first call up as well. And so it's really interesting because I think for the longest time, Jane Campbell was, I think, the forerunner for the goalkeeper,
Hmm.
and then all that switched because she stopped playing, well, and underperforming for the dash, and Emma Hayes was like, well, let me take this Man United goalkeeper and put her in, and now I think she's the number one at the moment, for the U.S. So it just shows you, uh, despite if you play for a good league like the WSL or the NWSL, form does matter. Form does, come into play for international. But I think it's real good. I think, like you said, hopefully it drives players like Avery, to continue performing well for the dash, and so that she can get more future call ups.
No,
But
100%. 100%. I think I love your point about form being important in call-ups because I think it also brings us to attention that back then the old US team didn't need form. They were better than every other team by a considerable margin. It's not the case anymore. And Matt Hayes knows it. And I think now you have to use every player that's playing at their best, or else you're going to lose to teams like Spain. You're going to lose to teams like Germany. You're going to lose to teams like France, like Colombia. So it's really important now than more than ever to use form as a guideline for calling up players. And I think Emma Hayes is brilliant for being able to do it in such a good way.
Yeah, I think it's just a good idea, good moving forward for her. I think, and then for all players to be on track, like it's no easy pass, despite I think despite not having a lot of I think maybe leagues in the women's league, unlike the men's. But I think you still have to bring your gay game. You still have to show up. You still have to perform. So hopefully that's going to be a good lesson for all these, and hopefully bringing that. I think sometimes when you go to international, you bring that contagiousness of like winning. Hopefully that
Mhm.
comes in as well to the dash as well.
Mhm.
So speaking of winning, unlike we're going to do this weekend, it's gonna be a really, really hard game to watch this Saturday. Very hard game. Even Diego's looking forward how hard this game is. So Saturday,
This was the game that I promised for the Maggie jersey, was it not?
I think so. That's crazy how time flies.
I'm gonna roll back the tape, but I think I remember there was a bet where if we win, I think it was against Orlando or it was
I think
against
I think it was Orlando, not
it was
KC.
Orlando.
I think
It was
I think I don't think KC was ever talked about, but I think it was Orlando.
I think yeah. If we beat Orlando, I'm getting a Maggie Graham Dash jersey.
Yeah, I believe you're right. I believe you're spot on that.
Yeah, and yeah, I think I'm 90% sure that this is the game.
Yeah, this is the game. I believe so. I believe so.
Well, I'm certainly hoping for a win. I'll tell you that the Pride have four and the Dash have one win in the last 5 games. Statistically, the Pride are better. Talent-wise, the Pride are better. You're playing in Orlando. They have a lot of momentum. Barbara Banda is trying to, really get that first place spot on the Golden Boot. So she's going to be more motivated than ever. I think Marta, the greatest player, the greatest player probably to ever put on a women's soccer jersey.
And she keeps going.
Yeah, she keeps killing it. I Summer Yates, incredible player. She scored last year when the Dash played Orlando in Houston. That was the game that they broke the record for the longest unbeaten streak in NWSL history. Um, Safe to say, a lot of the signs point to Orlando winning. That might be a hunch, but yeah, it'll be a game for sure. I think. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it because I mean, rating wise, they are both pretty similar. Only point 0.2 difference out of 10, as Orlando averaged 6.92 out of 10, and the Dash 6.79. So it's like pretty even on that front. Um, Form is actually pretty even as well. Both teams have 2 losses in their last 5 games, whereas the Dash also equal them in wins, with 2 wins. So I mean, I don't know. All signs point to us losing, but there is hope in our form and in maybe by the grace of all things that are holy, exhaustion from the international break.
Yeah, I think so. I think uh, a lot more call ups in the dash, than they had in this window. But you still have a lot of decent players. You know,
Mhm.
um, I think it's really interesting how this team can perform and everything. I think despite moving pieces, I think Angelina this year hasn't been her best as last year.
Hmm.
Of course, you have Carson Pickett, who's been a stunner left back, but has been moving forward a little bit, moved forward a little bit. I think that's hindered her effectiveness on the pitch. Uh,
Hmm.
Haley McCutcheon, who used to be for the Houston Dash, last year had an excellent season, goal scoring, clutch, and defending, but seemed to have a slow start. But yet, you rely on players like Marta and Banda, who still performs, who still will get the game deciding goal, and of course Morehouse, has been solid in the back of the net. I think it's just really the the foundation is still there for the Pride. There's still a team that can hurt you. There's still a team that can despite the form. I think you just can't go in there overly confident that despite form, you might take something. You just still have to be prepared. You still have to be aware. You still have to watch the open spaces you leave to make
Hmm.
sure that Barbara Banda doesn't get behind you, or even Marta with a pass can go through you. So it's very very interesting to see how this matches up. I think I would like to see how the team bounces back from international break. The Houston Dash wise, I think I really like this window just because the team can get a break, recover mentally, and then hopefully an extra few days to get with Fabrice and to get speak with tacticals and everything. It's never a bad idea to refresh everything. But I think it's gonna be a good game to watch. More for Orlando than for Dash, but it's still a good game
Yeah.
to watch. But I think my
Yeah.
question for you, would be what should the Dash do differently to defeat or to get a result at Orlando? They should stick with what they were doing more defensively, or maybe trying to play a little bit differently
No,
against
they
this team.
have to. They have to play offensively. If you play defensively, they are going to score against you. I really want to bring back the game against the Pride last year when we hosted them at the Shell. I say this without any hesitation, regardless of the amazing goals that Avery Patterson has scored throughout her career. That was the single greatest game she has played in the NWSL, in my humble opinion.
Mm-hmm.
The way that she utterly locked up Barbara Vanda, which is known as one of, if not the best player in this league, as a rookie, was incredible. I mean, Ricky Clark said it. She probably said it. Like, everybody was put on notice when she played that well against Bandit. And I have to stress, she has to do it again. She has to do it again in order for us to really get any semblance of defensive momentum. And I fully see her being able to do so because she has the speed, she has the footwork to really catch up to Banda. I think Banda's one of her biggest skills is her trickiness on the ball. You never really know where she's gonna play, where she's gonna move. I think Avery's footwork is good enough to match up to that, and that really showed in last year's game. And and so I think that the key to this game really is going to be that matchup of Patterson versus Banda. Because if Banda can at least be neutralized, then you only really have to worry about one player, and that's Marta. And at that point, it's a midfield battle. Any transitional play, you'll really be able to benefit and sting Orlando, which admittedly has had less effectiveness defensively because they're pushing such high of a line. And so I think really that key of you have to attack. You have to have that mentality to attack, to fight. The moment that gets lost, I think that's where Orlando wins the game.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's gonna be a really really interesting. Uh, I think it's a really interesting matchup and really interesting what they need to do and what how the team should navigate and everything. I think it's gonna be making sure things come up and what they need to do. And I think it's gonna be a good game to see as well for Colaprico and Sheehan. Will they go
Mhm.
back, and see how things are going through, and things should be handled But you know, uh, I think it's just we see. I think though too. I think still questions to see who will start. I think defensive. We kind of know it's going to be Jacobs, Lynn, and I'm
We're
not
gonna
that.
see. Are we
Huh?
gonna see Abby Smith at goalkeeper? Are we gonna see the return of Jane?
That's a good question. That's a really good question.
What
That's
would you like to see? Would you like to see the experience of Campbell in this game, or do you want the player that's a little more informed in Abby Smith? I think they bring a lot of different qualities at the goalkeeper position.
I
So like,
I think it's very hard. I think I would love the heart of me. I think love will see Jane Campbell back. I think to see if that rest on the bench served her
mhm,
well to reset.
mhm.
But it's really up to Ricky Clark and see what he says and how things are progressing. I think Abby Smith, I think she has good in moments, but I think over the long space of time, I still trust Jane Campbell more. That's just because of her experience and longevity, the saves she's been doing. Now I can't remember who was in the back line. Jacobs, then,
Nielsen.
but Nilsson's been benched, so I'm thinking like who was the other center back? Man, I tell you, one day, I think you're right. I think it's been, man. I tell you, one week off, and like I'm forgetting everything.
It's been what?
Yeah,
Jacobs, Patterson, unless they play her a little higher, but normally she's a part of that back line.
Westfall, that was the one. Westfall.
Westfall. Okay.
I tell you, man. I tell you that we have one week off, and my brain went through.
Yeah,
And
no, that's fair. Because when they get to do the international break, they're not breaking. They are working really hard. We are
yeah,
the ones that are sitting on our couches and just
I
enjoying the
know.
show.
And then I think my other question will be, you know, hopefully this will be the first game back for Yasmin
Mhm.
Ryan, who's been missed heavily in the game. So I think she'll be back as well. So it'll be her, Messiah Bright, of course, and
Mhm.
then M- Maggie Graham on top as well, or Barb is getting coming back.
Maggie Graham hat trick.
Hey,
That
man,
would be so poetic for us to win with a Maggie Graham hat trick and for me to get her jersey.
I think if she gets a hat trick, I think that kind of cements, almost cements. I don't know. It's really hard. I think, and not cement as rookie of the year, but it's very close up there.
I'm like I'm like Riley's been killing it for Angel City, but that girl
Right,
Maggie, if she scores
Riley,
that hat trick,
and it's gonna be something to tell. I think it is. I think it'll be quite a story. I think, but for sure, I think if she
yeah,
scores or anything, I think it's kind of cement herself as rookie of the year. Just how much she has been in importance to the dash. But
yeah, she's been one of the more valuable. I don't know if most, but one of the more valuable players on this team, and
I,
I
I
think
think I think more is valuable. I think just because the impact she just came off, as a rookie.
yeah,
I think you just blindside. I think you see the hype and you're like, okay, we'll see when we get there. But I think off the bat, you're like, okay, she's different.
no, yeah, and like admittedly, there wasn't much hype around Maggie. I feel like this might be like a victim of like the NCAA women's soccer getting less attention than other paths to the NWSL, might I say.
Hmm.
Maggie coming onto the dash was a little under the radar, considering we got players like Delaney, like Yaz. So I felt like that move was like, okay, great, yeah, we have another midfielder. And then we saw her play, and we were all like, what? This is who we brought on?
Hmm.
Sign me up. And like I had the pleasure of watching her at Duke, and so like I knew she was incredible. And for those that paid attention to Duke women's soccer, they know that she was incredible. I think really her impact on both sides of the ball in the midfield has been immeasurable, and I think if she scores against Orlando, I don't see any other rookie that's having more value to their team than Maggie Graham is.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. So I think it's just that. I think the only question is where will Fabrice cooperate here. I think so. Because the other position
We're
that
at
I'm thinking,
goalkeeper at this point. Give her a clean sheet.
yeah, I think the only position I'm thinking that's question marks. I think is the Ryan Garris position on the left side.
Yeah. She did not play that. She did not play well under that Garris like fullback, not really fullback
Yeah,
position.
I think as well. Thinking we have Garris, and Dujon has been there as well. So I think we'll see what turns out and what comes up. I
Mhm.
think this could be very good. Now, before we close off, your final predictions, Diego.
Just because I don't necessarily feel like I want to spend $200 on a jersey, I'm gonna say we're gonna lose 2-0. However, like I'm like that MLS referee that was like really popular on like reels like a couple weeks
Right,
ago.
right.
However,
How?
despite the ruling that we will lose 2-0, however,
Right.
I genuinely hope we will win. I do hope. Like this is not just me saying like because I support the Dash, but like we need this one. We're 3 points to tie up a playoff picture spot. This would be a huge, 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 huge win for us. Like actually, I like if we win any of these games, this is the one to do so.
Yeah, I think it would be huge. I think
Mm-hmm.
if the Dash beat Orlando, I think it would be game of the week because it's an unexpected
Yeah.
treat, And I think if the Dash went convincingly even more, I think those could be more headlines, But I think it's really hard, a tall task to come. So I think it's really we'll see how. I think the favorites on our side since it's after international break. You don't know how teams are, especially in NWSL. So it's really a coin toss up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I go with a 1-0 win for the Dash.
Hey, so you want me to spend that money, huh?
I want to see that Chad,
Spending on Maggie, bro. Oh my
yeah,
god,
Chad,
my wallet
and then
is crying.
and then and then and it's gonna be a Maggie goal.
Maggie, go, love that. I love that.
So we'll see how it goes. But hopefully it's that. Interesting though. There's only 3 games left before the summer break. So this game next week here at home versus San Diego, and then one more away at I think it's away. I think it's almost away. Give me a moment. Yes, away at North Carolina to face the Courage
Mm.
before we go. So hopefully within the few days, we'll see this Summer Cup games that we're gonna have. Uh,
Bring Arsenal to the shell.
bring Emily Fox back to the show.
Bring well, not PSG. OL. Leon. Bring
Leon?
Leon.
Nah, I think they will go with Spirit.
Huh?
If anything, they'll face the Spirit because
Oh yeah, the owner.
Michelle King owns.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. By the way, very nice lady. Very nice
Oh
lady.
yeah,
I
very
ran
nice.
into her in Washington, and she was very nice. Very
Very
nice
rich,
lady.
very rich, but very nice.
Yeah, very nice. Very, very rich, but very nice woman. Very nice woman. I will say
Yeah,
that. She was very nice to me, and it meant a lot for somebody that just was starting to take photos in the NWSL. So, shout out,
yeah.
shout out, shout out,
Shout out to Michelle King.
shout out to
Hopefully,
me.
maybe I'll listen. But no, that's pretty much it. So it's really, I think next episode could be a good perfect good to see. Okay, what games have before we close up the summer, and I did find out the summer transfer when it does open up July 1st.
Okay.
So a month from now, we'll see how things turn up. But thank you all once everyone to stick around with us with the Bio City Soccer at the Orange and Blueprints podcast. So we'd like to thank our sponsors, the Ugly Guppy, Elotes Bravos, who has been sponsoring us for this fan feud. over with Rudy at the Bayou City, our main podcast. I know he has been putting in a lot of Dynamo questions, but he's trying to make it harder with putting some Dash questions. So I know those going to be harder than the Dynamo questions. So
Where's the dash? Where's the dash trivia? I need to see that. I need to see
yeah,
that
I
one.
know. Rudy keeps the slideshows close to his chest, so there's no
Yeah.
be no leakage for answers. But and then of course we like to thank as well. We got soccer as well for being our sponsors as well. But that will be it for our podcast. Hopefully, we'll come back with you with a positive result against Orlando, and hopefully Diego will have his jersey by then as well. So we'll see, and then of course we'll recap the San Diego Wave Pride Night at the show.
At the show. Hold it down. Hold it down.
All right. Thank you all. Any last words before we head out, Diego?
No, just watch the game, tune in, support your dash, and pray that the money will go from my wallet to the Houston Dash. That way, that money will be used for a brand new striker.
Yep. Yep. We'll see it. We'll see it. But all right. If anything, thanks for all. Hope to tune in next Wednesday. And peace.